We begin tonight with some very late-breaking news in the case of Bill Sparkman, the 51-year-old part-time field worker for the United States Census who was found dead in rural southeastern Kentucky's Daniel Boone National Forest. Mr. Sparkman's death made national news this week after an anonymous law enforcement source told the Associated Press that he had been found hanged and that the word Fed, presumably as in federal government, was scrawled on his chest when his body was found. Well, tonight we have brand new details which do not at all dampen the worry that Bill Sparkman's death was what we first worried it appeared to be, violence against a federal employee because he was a federal employee. This afternoon, the Clay County coroner confirmed to us what had previously just been the assertion of an unnamed law enforcement source, the fact that the word Fed was indeed written on Mr. Sparkman's chest. Local media reports are saying that it was written on his chest in felt-tip pen. Now, as we gathered that news, Kentucky State Police told us that they have still not yet determined if Mr. Sparkman's death was a homicide, a suicide, or an accident. They did confirm yesterday, of course, that the cause of death for Mr. Sparkman was asphyxia. And then tonight, these new disturbing details have emerged. The Associated Press now reporting that one of the witnesses who discovered the crime, came upon the crime scene unexpectedly, is a man identified as Jerry Weaver. He was visiting the area, although he's not from there. He's an Ohio native. This witness says that Mr. Sparkman's body was naked. His hands and feet were bound with duct tape. In addition, two people who have been briefed on the investigation but who spoke on the condition of anonymity told the Associated Press that a census employee identification badge, the kind that all census employees are instructed to wear when they go door to door, that badge was taped to Mr. Sparkman's head and shoulder area when his body was found. Now, on the record, law enforcement authorities remain cryptic. This reporting, however, paints a most troubling picture. None of the details of Bill Sparkman's death that we have learned since we first found out about this point away from the possibility that he was killed for his affiliation with the United States government. We are joined now on the phone by Associated Press Lexington, Kentucky correspondent Jeffrey McMurray, who has been covering this story. The big breaking wire service story, AP story on this today, is co-bylined by Mr. McMurray and by Roger Alford. Mr. McMurray, thanks very much for joining us.
You're welcome. Good to talk with you, Rachel.
This witness, Jerry Weaver of Fairfield, Ohio, had it previously been known that he was among the people who came across the body?
It hadn't been known. It was something particularly my colleague Roger Alford had been working on trying to track down for some time in the last 24 hours. What we did know was that the body was found somewhere near a family cemetery, most of the tombstones with the name Hoskins on the tombstones. His name is, of course, Weaver, but we understand he has some relations to some of the people buried there, and that there was some activity at the cemetery on Saturday morning when the body was found. The amazing thing that I see, having been to the scene myself and realize how remote the area is that Mr. Sparkman didn't go missing until Wednesday or Thursday in a very remote area of the Daniel Boone National Forest. Yet he was found 2 days later. It so happened that this family gathering or some members of the family stumbled across a pretty disturbing crime scene.
In terms of the circumstances of the body when it was found, and this is why we're leading with the story, frankly, right now, and this is why this is so disturbing, you quote Mr. Weaver as describing in pretty minute detail the condition in which he found the body, and the way that Mr. Weaver was, the way that Mr. Sparkman was bound. Can you describe that?
Yes, and then I put the premise again that I did not personally speak with Mr. Weaver. My colleague did, but it's my understanding that Mr. Weaver, found the body bound, duct taped, tied to a tree. We were told by law enforcement already that he was tied to the tree. He was technically hanging, but he was not hanging in the traditional way because his feet were actually in contact with the ground at the time the body was found. It was a very bizarre, strange case, and while law enforcement's not using the word stumped, the fact is that we're 2 weeks later and there's been no announcement of an arrest, and and really no information other than they believe the preliminary cause of death is asphyxiation.
And, of course, with the confirmation from the coroner today that the word fed was written across Mr. Sparkman's chest, and then this new information about the ID being taped to his otherwise naked body at the time, this is what's leading us to worry that he was killed, in fact, because he was a federal employee. Now, Mr. Weaver told told Roger Alford from the AP that he saw that there was an identification tag duct taped to the side of his neck on the right side, almost on his right shoulder. He said he couldn't tell if the tag was a Census Bureau ID. But you have two other sources who are people who were briefed on the investigation who do say that that tag was specifically his census worker ID.
I can, without getting into too much detail, I can tell you that much of the information that Mr. Weaver provided us, we were able to corroborate with law enforcement sources who spoke on the condition of anonymity with various sources on that, and you know that is, and the fact that Mr. Weaver was not someone who sought us out. We found him is the reason that we were able to run with the story and report the new developments that we've reported tonight.
Jeffrey McMurray is an associated press reporter in Lexington, Kentucky, and those new developments you've been able to report seem to be breaking this case wide open for a national audience. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your reporting.
Thank you, Rachel.
Joining us now is NBC News correspondent Ron Mott. He has also been covering this story. He joins us now on the phone. Thanks for being here, Ron. I appreciate it.
You bet, Rachel. Good evening.
While you were covering this story in Kentucky, I understand that you found a strong suspicion of government generally among people who live in that area. And, of course, you can't generalize to everybody who lives in a particular county, but what can you tell us about the overall political atmosphere there?
Yeah, Rachel, we want to be fair, obviously, to all the law-abiding citizens of the Commonwealth. But one of the things that I think will begin to come into clearer focus here over the next couple of days, perhaps weeks, as this investigation goes forward, is that part of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Clay County, where this body was found. There's a general sense of lawlessness there, and police sources tell us that because it's a dry county, there are some people down there, some unsavory characters who are bringing in alcohol and illicit drugs, and they are selling it to the people in that county. We've been told that there are hidden marijuana fields there, that there is a high concentration of methamphetamine production there. And so law enforcement, the Drug Enforcement Agency, has had a presence there. And if there is any sort of anti-government sentiment, it is probably born out of that. Now, whether Mr. Sparkman was killed because he's a federal employee or if he was in fact killed is yet to be seen. He may have, in fact, stumbled onto a scene that someone did not want him to see, and maybe that is why he was killed, if he was killed. So there's a lot of lingering questions here. I get the sense that the officials know a lot more than what they've said publicly, and some of this information is starting to filter out because of good reporting from Jeffrey McMurray and his colleagues and others. So we'll just have to see what the coming days will bring.
Indeed, all of these new details do create the expectation, I think, that we will hear something more specific from law enforcement. As you know, Ron, we've been hearing recently that they haven't even determined whether this is homicide, suicide, or an accident. To found a body that was bound hand and foot, gagged, and with a federal employee identification tag taped to the body, and then it defaced with the word fed, we're starting to get to a point where it's hard to imagine that this could be anything other than a homicide. That said, we're still waiting for law enforcement confirmation on that, aren't we?
Absolutely, yeah, and it may be some time before that confirmation comes. I think it also should be noted that today the census director, out of an abundance of caution for that particular area, and because this case is starting to generate a lot of interest, has pulled back and has temporarily suspended door-to-door canvassing. And whether that is going to spread around the country, we'll just have to see. But clearly there are people in this country who have some disdain for government of any kind, and particularly the federal government. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this all proceeds going forward. It's a very sad story on the base level that a family has lost a member, and a lot of people in the community in Laurel County, where he was a part-time school teacher, they really miss him, and they are saddened that his life ended this way. And here's a man who's a cancer survivor who went back to college at the age of 47 to earn a degree, got his degree, and gave the commencement speech and tried to encourage all of his fellow teachers. This was a big teaching institution out west. all he wanted to do was to be a full-time teacher, and because that job and that opportunity had not yet presented itself, he was trying to earn a little extra money by taking the census for the U.S. government, and apparently has lost his life as a result of doing so.
Ron Mott, NBC News correspondent, thank you very much for your reporting. Ron, thanks for joining us tonight on Short Notice. Appreciate it.
You bet.